It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Tuesday, May 28th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is talking Tyson Foerster.
Good conversation.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We are at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. You can find our show over on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, some exciting news for us salary cap geeks out there. Cap friendly rolled over to the 24-25 season, which is always a momentous day when you don't have to mentally erase that column from your list there. But I think it's interesting. So first off, they base it on the aforementioned $87.7 million salary cap that had been previously announced. It could change, but not likely at this point. And so that, of course, gets us thinking about not this year's UFAs and RFAs, but the following year's UFAs and RFAs. And the biggest name on that list, of course, for the Philadelphia Flyers is Travis Konecny.
Yep. Yeah. Travis Konecny. That's a big one because there's been a lot of discussion and we know that his contract is up. I remember discussing it with somebody 4 or 5 months ago, maybe 3-4 months ago. And it's a hot topic because, the word is that, and I do believe this, is that like, hey, he wants to be a Flyer for life. Okay, great. I don't want to give him 8 years if I'm the GM. I don't. If I'm giving you 8 years, I'm not giving you $10 million for 8 years. I'm giving you a lot less. No. But the unfortunate thing is that's not how the hockey world works. And so if 10 was really the number and they were really not going to negotiate beyond that, which they will, but if they weren't, I would just tell them we're probably going to trade you. But I wouldn't go over 8.5. And I would only want to do 4. Could I be stretched to 5? Maybe. Would I go beyond 5? Never. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, I think, especially because you look at his age. So he's 27, which means he'll be 28 at the end of next season. And you look at that age 35 mark, right? So you really don't want to give him a contract that goes past age 35. You want it to end at 34 at the latest, I think.
I'm ended it at 32 or something, and that's fine.
Right.
But I get what you're saying.
But I'm saying
yeah,
at the absolute maximum.
Right, at the worst, yes.
At the worst, that you want it to end at age 34. I just don't think you can go beyond that for him.
Yeah.
And then the other factor I think you look
at. I want to give you the flip side. The flip side of this, there'll be people that leave messages. There's people that will stop you on the street. Well, maybe not in Astoria, but in other places when you visit your parents. And they're going to say, hey, there are 35-year-old players in this league. And there are. But how many of them are really great? I want that list.
And that's when you sign a 35 and over contract. Like,
right.
It's just a different kind of contract at that age. And I think, and you earn that, right? You earn the right to a 35 and over contract by having longevity in this league. And he's got enough of an injury history, I think, to also want to stop at age 34 at the absolute maximum. And you also, I think, have to look at comparables. And so there's comparables on the team and there's comparables around the league. If you look to comparables on the team, and they just gave Owen Tippett that $6.2 million contract for 8 years. Now, of course, Tippett's younger, a couple years younger, so you can give him the full term. right? At that
Yeah,
point, you look at Travis Konecny's value to this team, and it's got to be more than Owen Tippett. So
yes.
6.2 is like the absolute floor you're looking at with him. Is he worth more than Sean Couturier on this team? At this point, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I know you're supposed to look at the time that Couturier signed that deal, and at that time versus now, can you compare those 2 and the value? I think you can to some degree, and I really think you might have to match or go higher than Couturier.
I don't know. I wouldn't go much higher.
No, but I'm saying you have to at least go
You
a
do.
skip higher
You
because he's
do.
the most valuable player on the team.
But here's my argument, right? So right now, um, Jeff Skinner, who had signed, originally with Carolina and he's with Buffalo, uh, he had signed an 8-year deal, and he was getting, I think it's 9. So Jeff Skinner did have a bounce back year last year, and he had 82 points, but this year 46 points, age 32, and that's you know he, now maybe and the thing is Skinner doesn't even get into the same kind of fracases that Konechny does. He kind of stays away from that, where Konechny is more aggressive. And so I look at Skinner, and even though he's a better goal scorer than Konechny, the points are pretty close. And that's what I sort of look at and say, yeah, I that's my argument for the hey, you might only be 32, but you're on the downside of your game compared to what you used to be.
Sure, but that's an external comparisons, right? So that's like the second half of the conversation.
It is the
Because
second half, yes.
yeah, I really think you look at like the team
No, what you're
comparables.
looking at is the right thing to look at first, but then,
Right.
if I'm working, let's say, for the team, I come in and say, "Hey, but
Mhm.
look at this one. Look how this is
Yeah.
aging."
Well, and I think, like, honestly, a good contract to look at is Kyle Connor because he's making significantly less, but is producing a little bit more. Like,
Ye
less than, like, your $10,000,000 that
Right, but
you're
he also
talking
did
about.
sign that how many years ago? Like, the prices go up.
They do, but
Like, with Skinner's
he
case, they way overpaid, right? Because his price is still a high price.
right, right. Yeah, I mean, they signed the Connor contract in 1920, so I get what you're saying there.
Yeah,
But that's like a $7.1 million contract, and
yeah.
so that's where. And then you look at the Couturier contracts that's 7.75, and that's where I'm coming out at 8
Yeah, 8's
for
fair.
this.
I think 8.5 is the most you could give.
8 to 8.5 is
Yeah,
what I would give him,
yeah,
and I would give it to him for 6 years.
yeah. I mean,
I
I wouldn't love that, but it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, I think that you can't give him the 8, to your point, 8 years,
No.
but I think you give him the max you think you can give him, and I think
Right.
that's 6 years.
Yeah.
And I think you owe him that as a courtesy, and because he is in a lot of ways the face of this team. Um,
For a
I
year or
I
2 more, that's it.
well,
That's the
but
reality.
he's carried you through
I know.
a significant portion, and he's gonna continue to produce, for over the next, I would say, 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
Minimum. So I just think that's where you end up based on all of this.
I think
Now,
that's fair.
the interesting aspect of, I mean, there's a lot of interesting aspects to this, but the Flyers cap situation is
Ain't
gonna
great.
make this the interesting challenge here, right? Because right now, with the cap friendly rollover that we talked about at the beginning of the segment, they have little to no cap space left unless they can, get more LTIR space used. Right now, they just have the Ryan Ellis contract as LTIR guaranteed, and they can't really sign anybody else until that happens.
Right. Now you can go over with the summer cap. You go over like 10%, but
Right.
but that's it. But then you're just pushing the problem down the road. It could be an issue where if you're waiting for LTIR to cap to kick in, I don't know the exact dates on all that, but it's possible a couple of the RFAs may not make camp. Like they have to just wait uh, until it clears up. But um, yeah, it's not a great spot to be in. The Ryan Johansson part of this uh, is the interesting part because it's not an easy fix. Like it
No,
was easy to say last year, "Hey, don't worry, Torts doesn't like him. He just won't play there." And luckily he was hurt. We don't know if he's going to come back hurt now. He might, what if he gets healed over the summer? Like, then there's a discussion the team has to have with him, and then so that one has to
and
get
that's $4
resolved.
million, right? And
Right.
that's like your remaining RFA money right there.
Yeah. Yeah. That has to get resolved.
Yeah. So, and this doesn't affect the Konecny contract because that's for next
No,
year. He
that's for
still
next
has
year.
one
And the other
more
tricky
year on his
thing,
deal.
the
But
other tricky thing is, like Danny Briere said, he's not buying out Peterson. Well, Peterson, that's another reason the cap's high because he has some money that still goes against the cap, even though he's getting buried in the AHL.
yeah, yeah, that's 3.85 million as a penalty. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
So, and we've already talked about the other dead cap space with Kevin Hayes and Tony
Right.
DeAngelo for this
Right.
season. It's a lot. It clears up significantly next season unless they buy out Cam Atkinson, in which case it just piles on top
Which
of
they
that,
might.
which
I
they
have a
might.
feeling now I have a
So,
feeling now, if they can't wiggle out of this very well, they're probably just going to let Cam play. And then at some
yeah,
point try and dish him off somewhere. They might do
I
that,
know.
but we'll see.
I know. There's a lot to consider there, and we will continue to do that. In the meantime, we are going to talk Tyson Foerster and his season roundup, and excited to talk about him because it's like almost entirely positive, which is a great thing to talk about. And we will do that coming up next. The NBA and NHL playoffs are approaching the finals. It would be incredible to be there in person. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting those tickets even faster and easier so you can make that dream come true. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip off. With killer last minute deals, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying those coveted NBA playoff seats, MLB tickets in your town, and more. My favorite part of the Game Time app is it's great for getting notified about last minute flash deals, and Game Time lets you save even more with zone deals, where you pick a section and let Game Time choose the seat for you. Best of all, they have all in pricing, so there's no surprise fees at checkout, and your tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through email. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem with the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. On tomorrow's show, we're going to look at the current state of the Metro as far as how things are shaping up for next season, because there's been a lot of changes in management and over the last couple of years. And so, where do the Flyers fit in? We're going to get into that on tomorrow's show, as well as answering your mailbag questions. So, get those in. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com, send us a message on Twitter, or comment over on YouTube. Tyson Foerster. God, do I love this kid. Drafted 23rd overall in 2020, was a Chuck Fletcher pick. And, at the time, I remember thinking, God, this is a solid pick, but it's not a very exciting pick per se. But, like, what was the story on him when he got drafted?
Actually, I was kind of excited because I had watched him a lot that season. I liked the big shot. He already had a good size frame, some pretty good strength, and just had to work on his skating and a few other things. And so, no, I thought this was really good because I was like, okay, this guy can score goals at the NHL level. There's no question. And he's been able to do that. Now, one of the things that I think might keep him from being like a 40 goal scorer is his footwork. He's a little late sometimes to set up his
Mhm.
shot when he goes to do it. Once he's ready to shoot, the release is quick, but he's got to figure out how to get to that space quicker and get set up quicker. That could be the difference of being, maxing out at like 27, 30 goals or being a 40 goal guy.
Right. So this season he was still considered a rookie,
Yeah.
and which was great for him personally. I think, especially in the games that he had got in the previous season, it wasn't really consistent, and he struggled a little bit. So to see him come and have a really good season was good. And I think the biggest takeaway from this season was that he really showed continuous improvement over the course
Hmm.
of the season, and his second half of the season was so good. His scoring jumped up, his confidence jumped up, and I think part of what helped there is that John Tortorella continuously praised him over the course of the season,
Yeah,
that
he was the
even when he
one. He
wasn't
was the
scoring.
one guy
Yeah,
he left alone and did that with, and he got good results. Had he done that with a few others, he might have gotten results with them too, but he just did it with him. You're right. He was the one.
yeah, and I think, with good reason that he was continuing to get that
Yeah.
praise even if he wasn't scoring, because he was playing a very good defensive game,
Hmm.
and that kinda showed in his exit
And he
interview.
was pushing some guys around, and John likes that. We know that too. So
Right, so, he said, "Well, if I'm not able to get the puck in the net, I'm gonna be a defensive-minded forward and play
right,
defense to create offense," and that really, really worked for him, and
it did.
I think, r his ability to adapt, I think, is one of his underappreciated skills
I agree.
around the league, that he just can adapt to his current state of being, he can adapt to teams around him, he knows what style to play for the different opponents, and I just think that is something that I personally appreciate about him the most.
No, I do too. Adaptability is a big thing with younger players, uh, and he did prove that. And so that is good. That'll serve him well in the next couple of years when the landscape of the Flyers starts to change. So, yeah, I mean, right now he's got this little window to keep perfecting his game before things get ramped up and expectations get much higher.
Right, and just to, like, put some numbers against that improvement for the season. So the first half of the season in 40 games, 5 goals, 11 assists, and 5.8% shooting percentage. The second half of the season, 37 games played, so a couple fewer games, 15 goals, 2 assists, 18.8 shooting percentage. That
Yeah,
is a
big difference.
huge difference.
Yeah, that's what confidence could do for you. And opportunity. I don't know how many minutes per game he was averaging, but I'm sure that went up too. That's usually a component of that.
Yeah, it went up overall versus last season,
Right.
by about 45 seconds, so he was at 17-16,
Yeah.
for the course of the season,
You
but,
definitely get a couple extra goals for that. Not 15, but you definitely will get 3 or 4 or 5 for that, but not 15. So that's good. That's really great improvement.
yeah, I think so. I think that, if you look at his physicality that we were just talking about, he threw a lot of hits this season, 102, um, and he had more hits thrown than taken, which I think is
Yeah.
really what you wanna see from a guy who plays this way. Um, I think that you also look at penalties, like, he took more penalties this year relative to games played, but I think that's natural when you play a more physical style and play more defensive hockey, but he drew 22 penalties, took 16, so he was on the right side of that stat as well.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, like, he has come through, where Isaac Ratcliffe didn't.
Mm.
Similar thing, second round, bigger guy, good shot, and one came through and one didn't, and that just shows the difference. That's how why the draft is a crapshoot a lot of times.
Yeah, it is interesting because Ratcliffe, I think, is an excellent comparison in terms of what you thought of the guy. I mean, obviously, Ratcliffe was taken later in the draft, but,
But not that much
still in
later.
ter
He's
not
35. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
respectable, and I really did like him in the draft, and, you know, he had good junior career, really good. Looked good when he
yeah,
first got there, and then there was a point where he stalled.
right, absolutely, and Tyson Foerster did not, and I think
No,
Foerster took his time in Lehigh and did all the right things,
he did.
and that's how he earned his position on the team this year, and I think that you look at his expected goals for in all situations, 60%. on this team, that had some problems clearly with some scoring at various points during the season. Tyson Foerster was on the right side of the trend for sure. Of the regulars, only Brink, Travis Konecny, and Joel Farabee had a better shooting percentage for the full season. He was 10th in rookie scoring in the league for the season.
Oh, I'll say he carried it a lot more than Brink did down the stretch. Brink down the
Sure,
stretch
absolutely.
was not noticeable.
Right, and that's what I'm saying, like, Forster was on the right side of that,
Yep.
but with those stats, you can only really look at the full season,
Right.
uh, there, but I think that all of that is significant, that, like, there's nowhere to go but up for this kid.
Yeah, I mean, in reality, with like next year's Flyers, he should be their third or fourth best scorer, like goal scorer,
Mhm, yep,
and I
I
think he
think
will be.
so. Yeah, so I wanna continue, talking about him, in terms of where he could potentially improve and how they can use him on the power play, because I think this could be, an element to his game that could help the Flyers and help him, plus some more goals for him for next season. We're gonna do that coming up next. All right, so Tyson Foerster, on the power play this year had 4 power play goals in 41 shots. And so that's like 2.5 points per 60 on the power play relative to 1.3 at even strength. And I just feel like this is a little bit of an untapped area for the Flyers here. And I'm just curious, Russ, what you think in terms of what should his position on the power play be? What unit? Where do you think he could bring the most?
I mean, to me, it's like it's him or Tippett. Which shot do you want on the top power play? And
Hmm.
right now, I probably pick Forster, only because
Yeah,
Tippett doesn't seem to hit it enough. So if I pick Forster, then it's not just on him to score because he's not going to be playing the bumper. He's not going to be playing in the crease.
no,
He's going to be playing up high. But you have to still have somebody go to the crease area and do some of that. And they didn't do any of that last year. Had if they do that, he'll add those points. It's a guarantee.
right.
But you got to find somebody willing to do that. And
Yeah,
that's the hard part. I know everybody says, "Oh yeah, we should go to the net. We should do it." You could interview guys sometimes and they'll tell you, but then like when the game happens, it just doesn't happen. So that's a big thing that could affect him. And then also, like I said, he's better with it on the power play as far as getting set up quick. But I still think even on that, he could do a little better. So if he does that, I think that's another thing that would add. But that's not all on him. Like he's not Alex Ovechkin. He's gonna
oh,
need some
sure.
help. Yeah,
Exactly. And I think it circles back to your point from the last segment about him getting set up for his shot
yeah,
faster, right?
yeah.
And I think that if they use him like that in the power play, I think that'll translate to his 5-on-5 play.
It would because he'll get more reps that way, and it should become
Mhm.
second nature. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it should help.
I think that, in addition to that, in terms of what he should be working on this off season, so he can focus on that and they could use him that way. As we've been talking about, they need to tell these guys what their role is going to be next season, at least to some degree, so they can work on these things.
And
And
I'm
that
not sure they did because like last year we heard when guys came in, they practiced one thing and they did another. So now everybody just seems to be practicing everything because they're not really sure.
Right. So I think this is one thing he should work on in terms
Right.
of that timing, because I think it'll be useful in a lot of different situations. So he doesn't have to know as much detail about his role
Correct.
in order to work on that. The other thing is, I think he should stay in the top 6 for the entire season. And that should be his goal for next season. And that means he's going to have tougher matchups. So he needs to prepare and get stronger in order to face those tougher matchups.
Yeah, I'd have him on the second line and keep him there. I'm fine
Yeah.
with that. I think that's probably what they need to do, and I do think that could help. But you still got to get him the right line mates. You got to see what really clicks.
Yeah, I think so. As far as, taking more shots, and there's only so much you can do in terms of, getting into your rhythm at the beginning of the season, and we saw his season progress positively, and he just wasn't getting the beginning. Like, what can he do to get off to a better start?
He could, like when there's zone entries, he could, be where he needs to be quicker. Maybe once in a while, switch sides. Maybe once in a while, go behind the net. Kind of mix that up a little bit. But let's face it. I mean, zone entries were a problem with the Flyers a lot of the year. Like
Yeah.
they're not just on the power play, just in general. Like some guys did it really well, and then some didn't. So that's why it really does matter who he gets set up with. Like if he gets set up with like Morgan Frost, then yeah, the zone entries are going to be good, and then he doesn't have to worry about any of that, and that may help him on where he sets up. So I think
Mhm.
that's a big key for him, and he's not going to know that until after they get through camp.
Right, which also will be interesting if they put Couturier at 2C for this team, that would put him with Forster, and then you really, really need a speedy guy to be that
Right.
third
Yeah, because
winger.
Couturier could be the last guy in. That's fine, into the
Right,
zone, but you do have to have somebody else in there earlier. So yeah, that would be a factor.
right, so it's gotta be like Konechny or Farabee, I
Yeah,
guess,
yeah,
is your other option there, but, I think that, unless Mitchkov is here, that's a whole other
right.
story, but,
I'm not going to
I
start
do.
holding my breath for that one though.
Right. So and as we said yesterday, it would be great if he gets here, but you have to plan for both
You do,
eventualities. So
yes,
it's going to be really interesting to see what Tyson Forster does this upcoming season and how they set him up for success. Because I think that this is a gap year between a season that was better than expected to a season where you should have high expectations.
yeah,
And how does Forster handle that?
yeah. Like most seasons, not everybody has a career year, right? So he's a guy that could still have a couple more career years down the line. So it's possible he could have one this upcoming season if things break right. If he does what he did last year, it's still okay, but you're looking for more. But again, it's we're not going to know that until we really see how the team is set up.
Yeah. So what is your goal for him just as far as points, goals and assists?
Well, how many total points did he end up with?
33.
So 33. So I'm looking
20
for
goals, 13 assists.
okay, yeah. So I'm looking for 45 to 50. So
Yeah.
25, 27, 30 goals, the rest assists.
Yeah, I think that's where it should be. I think minimum goals you want to look for is 25.
Yeah.
But you would like to see 27 to 30.
Yeah. I mean, you already got 20, so you can get 25 out of them. Like that's definite.
Yeah, I mean, as long as he stays healthy, knock on wood.
Right.
I think you absolutely can do that. But I'm so excited to watch this kid
Oh yeah.
grow and be a huge part of the core of this team moving forward. I think he's one of those guys that, unless something disastrous happens or you get the most unbelievable offer on this planet, he's a guy that you just don't think about trading.
No, and I'll tell you, he's good in the locker room in the sense that he doesn't really get put off by questions. He's not too high, not too low. He's one of those guys.
Yeah,
And so he handles the media very well, which is good in this town. It's a plus if you could do it.
yeah. Really, really love Tyson Forster. Looking forward to next season. In the meantime, we do have our weekly listener poll up about teams around the NHL that could make a big splash at the NHL draft. Make sure you vote in that. Link in the show notes. And we will be talking about draft eligible prospects later this week. So if there's anybody you want us to talk about, let us know. You can send in those mailbag questions, those suggestions via Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment over on YouTube. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube that's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On. plus national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Have a great day, everyone.